What we do, there's no off season being a founder. And like you said, it's 24/7. These athletes, yes, they're under a lot of pressure. We are also under a ton of pressure. It's all relative. Everything we have is on the line when we found these companies. And the psychological challenges we face, to be able to deal with them adequately, I believe needs some expertise. So sure, we coach a lot of executives, we coach a lot of leaders, we coach a lot of founders, but we have a concentration and discipline in mental performance.
I'm Matt Tate, founder of Decimal and fellow entrepreneur. Yes, I'm one of the crazy ones. I've chosen time and time again to hustle my way through that first million. Now, I'm scaling to the next 50. So I know firsthand what the messy middle is really like. And I know that entrepreneurs and leaders like us need a destination for empowerment, community, and encouragement. This is our place. This is After the First Million. Welcome to After the First Million. I'm really excited today to talk to Kevin Bailey, the CEO of Dreamfuel. And for those of you that don't know Kevin, his story's awesome. He's a lifetime entrepreneur. He was the CEO of one of the fastest growing tech companies in Indianapolis of a generation, sold that company. Through that, ended up developing a mindset and a passion for mindset coaching and performance coaching for CEOs and leaders. And that has led to his own company today. But I think it's a fascinating journey of getting to know yourself and helping other people. So Kevin, welcome to After the First Million.
Excited to be on the show, man.
I always like to start with a question of, to run and start your own company, which you've done multiple times, you've got to be a little bit crazy.
For sure.
So when did you know that you were one of the crazy ones?
Great question. I think when I was like a kid, my dad owned muffler shops, and sometimes I used to come and work with him, and I was a big car fanatic. And he used to just kind of talk to me about his businesses and the freedom that it gave him, and some of the real challenges it gave him. But I always just kind of admired my dad and looked up to him, and sort of I just sort of thought I was going to go in that direction intuitively from a really young age. Going back all the way through my lineage, entrepreneurs. My mom's Jewish, and her family's family, they own buildings in Chicago and stuff, but they got that off of running theaters during the Great Depression, which did really well. So they were in like the movie industry back in the day in Chicago.
And that's actually fascinating. I wouldn't have expected that theater, something that was a discretionary spend, would have done so well during the Great Depression.
Yeah, they like to talk about it. They basically said that it was, people were so down and out, frustrated, they'd spend their last pennies on some entertainment, It was their way to escape. Escapism is a strong pull.
It is. And we'll touch on this later as we get to Dreamfuel today, but I think the psychology of who we are and why we make decisions is fascinating, both as individuals and as a society sometimes.
Certainly.
So before we go too deep into our brains, which that's a scary place as mine, but yours is probably much more put together.
Scarier. I'm kidding.
When you and I first talked, you actually said that your first, call it startup or business, was your junior year of high school.
Yeah, actually, sophomore year. Yep.
Sophomore year of high school. I was focused on everything but that. But what did you guys do? And kind of talk about that as just like a starting point for your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing basketball and I loved it. And then I was off hanging out with some friends in Florida, dirt biking and stuff like that. Ended up getting a punctured lung and basically got bedridden, lost sports, lost my kind of motivation to compete in that regard. And I was watching something on TV, a commercial, and it was about AOL MySpace, which is actually what it was called. And it was just free web space. And I loved cars, like I talked about my dad and the auto shops. And I built a website of my favorite car, the Dodge Viper, at the time, and became the most, I guess, popular portal for Dodge Viper fans in the mid 90s. When I was the only person in my school that knew how to code, because I just sat in bed, just recovering from this accident, this injury. I got a check from Commission Junction or ClickTrade, one of the two affiliate networks back then, for $800 in the mail for the first month I advertised on it. We basically figured I ranked it on Yahoo. as the first entry for Dodge Viper. And then my mom got the check in the mail and she's like, comes up to me, she's like, "What is this?" Just slams it down on my table like I was doing something wrong. And I built this website, it's popular, and this is for advertising. And she just like looked at me cross-eyed. But I was proud of it. I brought that same check into school, showed my two friends, Jeremy Derringer and Aaron Aders, and they got starry-eyed and they're like, "Can you show us how to do this?" And I showed them how to build websites. They're also car guys. They built websites, and they would emerge into being the business partners of my first startup when I graduated college.
Oh, that's awesome. Small world too. To my junior prom, I drove a blue with white stripes Dodge Viper.
Damn, you're the guy I wanted to be.
One of the things that I learned is for some people that get a taste of starting something like you did when you were a sophomore and in high school, that's enough. But for you, that ended up being something that led to a career of starting and helping grow businesses and helping people grow their other businesses. So when you got out of college, though, that wasn't your first thing. You decided to go the total corporate route. Am I right?
Yep.
And why didn't that fit?
So I was super fascinated by finance. Kind of wanted to be an investment banker, but something about the hours didn't resonate with me. So I got into management consulting for intellectual property strategy, and it was a great company, Sierra International, formerly Intercap, based out of Boston, mostly Ivy Leaguers. I was in there for a few years and got promoted to associate, and I was working with these vice presidents, the partners of the company, kind of like an accounting company, big accounting company, but in this case, they're doing intellectual property strategy work. I mean, the only thing I could tell eventually is that I thought that, and I was like, I could be rich if I stayed on this path because they all did very well. But I was like, I think I'm going to lose my essence or core or something if I stay here. So I quit without no safety net.
Be interested. I'm going to track this back later, but I'm going to be interested if any of your other experiences help negatively push you towards kind of losing who you were, and at various times you've had to yo-yo that back to yourself. Because I've found in business at times, sometimes things just take on a life of their own, and then you look back and you're like, wow, that wasn't who I was.
It's a big fight. And the more experience you get, the more you can future cast and kind of see if you make this decision, the butterfly effect that's going to happen with you and how it may dampen your consciousness or something like that, and sometimes it's worth it, and sometimes it's not.
So you decided that that wasn't the future you wanted. And from there, you ended up starting what became one of the hottest, fastest growing startups of a generation in Indianapolis.
Yep.
Talk about that whole journey from the beginning.
Well, I told you about my buddies. We built websites, car websites back in the day. I was dating a girl in Miami. I had quit from CRA. They paid very well, and I didn't have much expenses, so I was kind of like, just living the life of a young, I had a girlfriend, but I was just having fun. I didn't know what was next. I drove through town, and I remember I called Jeremy, he's just one of my friends from high school. I was like, "Hey, man, what's up? We should hang. I'm kind of just chilling, so to speak." And he's like, "Yeah, man, come over. Aaron's over. Like let's just grab a drink and talk." So we all sat down and we started drinking, and Jeremy was like, "Hey, dude." He's like, the stuff that we were doing in high school, helping promote these car sites. He's like, I've been doing it for my dad's business, New Pro Containers. And he's like, working tremendously effectively, very well. My dad's business is going gangbusters, and all of his friends are like, what the hell are you doing, George? That was his dad. And he's like, we just have this unique knowledge set that most people don't have, that we developed in high school, that we should put to work. And I was like, at that point, Google, I think it recently IPO'd, and it was just like, if you understood how to do the paid and organic side of search marketing, you had a very special skill set. So there was just the luck of learning the stuff in high school, and we just were able to go to market with it. And I remember, meeting with executives at like United Healthcare. Pretty early on, we got large clients, and we were sitting in a boardroom with them. I remember the person who introduced us. These guys got gray hair and stuff, and they were like kind of like, why is this guy? Why are these people talking to us? And they're like, these are the only people who know how to do this. It was basically what the manager said. So you're talking to a bunch of 20-somethings about your search marketing.
Don't look at them. They're really good at this.
Yeah,
Though.
it's like these are the only guys. You're not going to find many people in their 30s that understand this stuff, or 40s or 50s. So we just had a unique knowledge set that allowed us to get contracts with some large companies quickly and grow really fast.
So talk about that because I've always found one of the most fun, at least nostalgically, one of the most fun parts of any startup is that kind of 0 to 1 where you're just figuring it out. You're just kind of cooking and it's just kind of the grind and fun of figuring out what's going on. But it sounds like you guys went through that pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was fast. We were so excited. I talk about that a lot. Like, there's an energy and an exuberance when founders come together of the right makeup and get excited about an idea. And I think, we were largely ego driven back then. We were excited about buying cars. We were excited about, the ego side of the business. It's fine. We got really excited about it. We got excited about the impact we could make for our families and for our friends and our employees. But I think we got so excited that there was a magnetism that most of the people in town who were successful either wanted to work with us or work for us. So we got to kind of our choice of talent, which was very cool. Got to hire some really amazing people. Some people that are doing amazing things now in Indy, got their start at our company.
That's really cool. So going back, what year did it start?
2006.
2006. And you were able to grow that business into how big did you get at the end or at its
At
peak?
the top, we were at about 12 million ARR, and we did that in pretty quick. Maybe like so it was tail end. So December 2006 is when we started, and I think we were there by late 2010. No, with no funding,
And how many employees?
over 100.
Over 100. You're in your 20s, 30s?
Yeah, I was 27, ish, around when
So
we were
you're in
starting
your
we were starting
late
to hit our
20s.
yeah.
And you go from, all right, this super cool idea to wow, we're crushing it to, oh shit, we have 100 people and we're building a business.
hmm
How did you deal with that transition?
I think once we realized, like when we first started to get acquired or potential acquirers courting us, we started to realize what we had. I mean, we were taking big distribution checks and we were making great money. I mean, it was phenomenal. We were very profitable, which was nice. But yeah, once we started to get acquirers coming around, being like, we're going to make you completely financially free before you're 30. We went from being very abundantly minded to being a little bit more scarcity minded, like, ooh, we got something to hold on to here. We better not squander this. And, this industry, I mean, search marketing was adapting so fast. We're like, this stuff changes constantly. And we started to get a little bit scared. And then, yeah, I had my first child, and that's a big, psychological challenge. And things just started to add up, and I started to lose kind of the exuberance, excitement, and confidence that I had as CEO. It was tough for me and for the team and my business partners.
What made you at the peak of success for this business lose or start to lose the passion for leading it?
I didn't think I had the skill set to take it to the next level personally. The business was starting to become quite complicated. I remember that the hierarchy, the staff around me, we had built a whole management layer at that point, executive layer. They were all like, twice as experienced as me. I would imagine, unfortunately, I mean, I didn't know any of that stuff back then, a fair amount of imposter syndrome was creeping in. And like I said, I had my first kid, and we had these acquirers kind of courting us. And, we got into a big acquisition process. And I was just like, boy, it would be nice to have somebody, an adult step in and come in and help me run this business. So yeah, I told my business partners, I was like, look, I can get this acquisition done. It's like a full-time job anyway, and let's bring in a CEO who can run it after we're acquired, and let's train that guy up and get me out of this because I don't think I'm equipped to handle this stage of the business with all the new stressors I had in my life at that point.
Looking back, I mean, obviously, you just said it, some imposter syndrome kind of creeps in. And I don't know about you, but it creeps in for me on a daily or weekly basis, depends on the day and the week. But it actually did lead you to bringing on a CEO.
Yep,
And you're running a parallel process of trying to get acquired.
yep,
What I know from the story is neither one of those went all that well.
nope.
Talk about that. Like, that's a hell of a stop and drop right there.
It's tough. We didn't do the right diligence for the CEO. He's a great person. Wasn't a great culture fit for us. We were, this kind of, it was just a little bit of vinegar and oil. I think eventually the culture could have wrapped around to him, but the fit was poor. We started missing some sales targets because our VP of sales all ended up kind of leaving, and it's hard to even remember back then. It's a while ago. But yeah, it got kind of messy. And I know that for the CEOs, the truth of the matter is we were meddling a lot with the CEO too. So I think we we sabotaged it as much as anybody else did ourselves. And I remember one time, he was kind of asking, he's like, hey, you hand the keys over, like, let me run this thing. And I remember we were just like, and it's kind of like obstinate, but we were just like, all right, we'll just leave. We'll go on a sabbatical. So we went on like a couple months sabbatical. Me and the business partners just like let it go. I've now coached a number of CEOs through this type of stuff. And I love that I had that background because now I can just basically talk them through all the things I did wrong to help them do it right. Because we did not do it right. It was on us. It was our fault that it didn't work out 100%.
What would you have done differently?
I mean, first of all, don't go into a CEO process with a scarcity mindset.
For those people that don't know, explain what a scarcity mindset is.
A scarcity mindset is, to explain it really simplistically, is when fear is completely in the driver's seat. An abundance mindset is where opportunity is in the driver's seat.
So, fear in your case, back with Slingshot, was fear that you didn't have the right people leading it, fear that you couldn't take it through, fear that you couldn't lead the business. I mean, I want to just clearly paint the picture of that was your scarcity mindset. And that's part of what harmed the bringing in of an outside CEO.
Yep. I thought, you can think of scarcity as like squeezing the sand out of your hand. I was squeezing too tight. I was playing too tight. Athletes who play too tight perform worse. CEOs who play too tight perform worse. I was squeezing the sand out of my hand, and I felt like I had to do it. There was no option other than that. I couldn't lead it any further. So, I didn't have a great coach along whispering in my ear, like, hey, you built a thing. We can probably get it a little further. Like, you don't actually need this. You can probably get this acquisition done. Like, unfortunately, I didn't have a great coach or a great mentor that was that close to me at that point to kind of, get in my ear and give me some hard truth. I may not have wanted it, but yeah, I mean, I was being impulsive and probably dismissive of some people who maybe were around giving me some of that advice. So I think there were some, I won't name names, but there were some that were kind of like, hey, dude, knock, knock, like you might be making a bad decision here.
And at the same time, that really big opportunity for an acquisition fell through.
Mm-hmm. We started missing our sales targets because the sales team was getting shook up.
How did it feel going from thinking, oh my gosh, I've hit the apex, I'm set for life, to oh shit, we're back?
Well, as this stuff kind of goes along with, I was having personal turmoil as well. So it's like I had business turmoil, I had personal turmoil at the same time, realizing that it didn't work out with the CEO and we were going to figure out how to come back in and like resurrect our mindsets, our performance to build this company back up, and keep it on track was a very intimidating ask for three young founders, all of which were burning out at that point.
Was that the first time you'd ever burn out?
Yeah, life had been pretty easy up to that point. I mean, I'd had my setbacks and stuff, like small stuff related to, like I said, I mean, athletic setback in high school, had to move, but I felt like life was a breeze up to that point. That was the first real friction I had in my life, the first real setback.
Having burnt out myself a couple of times, getting back up and doing the same thing is nearly impossible. Getting back up and doing something different is easier, but still hard. But you had to get up and do the exact same thing. How did you do that?
That's when, my next hero's journey, the second mountain or whatever, started, which during the period we were taking a sabbatical, I met a neuroscientist. Her name's Diane Powell. And I met another very intelligent caretaker of nonverbal autistic children and their families. And I thought what they were doing was neat. I've always had a soft spot for autistic children. I just started helping them with marketing because I knew marketing. Slingshot was a marketing company. And as I was doing that, they were kind of, I don't know, mildly diagnosing me and kind of being like, hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Like you'd be amazed what you can do with your nervous system if you think this way, or you try this physiological technique or whatever. They were just sort of, and I was watching them turn these families around, like work with parents who had nonverbal children, where there was just so much tension between the children and them, and just helping them have happy homes using these tools. And eventually I was just like, hey, like this stuff's crazy. Can I apply this to business? Nobody at that point was talking about this stuff. Like breathwork and stuff nobody was talking about it. And they're like, yeah. They're like, this stuff should work. It should work for leaders. They use it in performance psychology for athletes. I don't see why it wouldn't work for leaders. So I started using it on myself and started to have this kind of resurrection happening with me. I started using it with our sales team. And my friends who were in town starting early stage startups at that point, like Greenlight Guru, were like, hey, like you're a changed man. Like what the hell happened? You're performing better at work. You seem like a different person. Like, what are you doing? And I told them, and they're like, would you come in and coach me and help our teams? And that was when I was like, yeah. And unfortunately, at that point, I was losing all of my curiosity and fascination with marketing.
True burnout. And it doesn't matter if you're in tech, if you're running a plumbing company, a muffler company, a car dealership. Like true burnout is a dilapidating thing. And it comes from, I mean, one of the things I've noticed, and you've probably seen this way more than me, is even as much as we talk about work life balance or work life integration or whatever the terminology is that we use, we live in a 24/7 job. When you're running a company, if somebody calls you on a Sunday night, your brain's on. They call you at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, your brain's on. Like, I love having a team that can work 40 or 50 or some of them 60 hours a week, but I'm in a 24/7 job. And true burnout, in order to really stand up, you have to have that candlelight in the darkness. That's something that gets you up to walk towards. And for you, it sounds like it was starting to understand neuroscience and starting to understand coaching and performance. And you were able to do that, it sounds like, starting in your old job. Even though it pulled you away from your passion for that, it gave you the ability to stand back up.
Yep. And I was also lucky enough at that point to meet a meditation coach who was a Vietnam fighter pilot who had cured PTSD with it. And he was coaching me as well as the neuroscientist. So I kind of had the mindfulness and kind of, I don't know, contemporary science there. That allowed me to at least stay in Slingshot, which turned into relevance for a while and get things as stabilized as we could get them. Never the former glory, but we're able to get an exit out of it. It was just, but it was nothing like what we could have had.
So you were able to get it to a steady state, able to sell it, which provided that nice fine line in the sand of you were able to move on.
Yeah, it gave me, I mean, the end of that was kind of nice for me. At the very end, I was, just doing sales basically out in Carlsbad, California, and I was just working deals, and that's where I really learned about sales. And I mean, I did sales before, but I got good at it, and it was a blast. And then after exiting from that, took like a year off. Like I said, we were pulling profits the whole time, so had a great bank account and just kind of recovered. And like I said, worked with Danielle and others, and some of the clients who had asked me to help them with this stuff after seeing what I had done. So had this nice little like grace to recover from the burnout for about a year.
So you and I have really connected on a lot of levels, on authenticity in business, on authenticity as people, on the importance of mindset coaching. Just so many times as leaders, people view this like closed, I have to do it myself. And oftentimes happiness and success comes from doing it together or doing it with. You've been able to turn what started out as a side hustle, a hobby of sorts, into what is now a business and a mission. You're a mission-driven company. Talk about the beginnings of that journey from hobby and recovery to business.
I wouldn't do it justice if I didn't talk a little bit about Powder Keg, which is the step in between. So what Slingshot taught me was, how the marketing ecosystem works. At the end of that, what we realized is, amazing earned media strategies around keystone pieces of content is the way to go. So I did that when I came into Powder Keg to help Matt. Slingshot was super involved in Verge. Then Matt rebranded to Powder Keg, and I kind of helped him launch Powder Keg. One of the big initiatives we did was an earned media survey, which turned into a report called the Tech Census. So we went and interviewed and surveyed hundreds of technology leaders, and I forget exactly what the stat was, but it became very glaring that almost all of them had mental health issues. And I was like, hey, look, Matt, like the stuff that I was dealing with the Slingshot, and Matt was with me at Slingshot, by the way, Matt Hunkler. And I was like, everybody's having this. Like, what should we do about this? And I was like, because I did stop the consulting when I started Powder Keg with Matt. I was like, I think I got to do this, Matt. And he's such a good friend and good person. He was just like, he's like, yeah, man. He's like, you made a mark here and you've been a big help, but go pursue that, man. That's your thing, obviously. So I left Powder Keg and started Dreamfuel, and yeah, it's been a blast.
So talk more about Dreamfuel. So you noticed in the tech census the mental health issues were something,
Hmm.
and you started Dreamfuel to help with that.
Yep.
How, why, what?
The why is kind of strange. So I, but worth mentioning because we do work with a lot of tech leaders. And when I was going through Slingshot, I read The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil, which is about the exponential growth of technology. At this point, most people have heard of him or it. At that point, it was pretty obscure. And I was just really excited about it. And Kurzweil talked about a lot of hypotheses in that book about what the future was going to look like. But what he made it very clear is that we're going to come across technology that is going to blow our effing minds over the next, 50 years. It's already doing it, but we're just seeing the beginning of it. Exponential, straight up, doubling technology every day kind of stuff is going to be mind blowing. So he's like, won't be able to tell the difference between robots and humans. Life extension for as long as you can fathom or want. So I was like, man, we're gonna have to get really conscious as a community of people to slip through this singularity and reap the rewards of it rather than destroying ourselves. So I was like, okay, who's gonna lead the singularity? Well, it's gonna be all these technology leaders. Like they're gonna build the technologies that's gonna slip us through the singularity. So how cool would it be to help them with their consciousness, help them become more mindful, help them become happier, better, more successful people so that they don't build bad companies that harm us ultimately, so that they build good companies that benefit society, help us build this amazing, kingdom of earth. So that was the why. And then I'd say on top of it, I had so much compassion and empathy for myself and those I knew who were going through it, clearly.
Well, and I think you have an outward passion to help people and an empathy to see pain.
Yeah.
There are lots of coaches out there. There are lots of people that say they're great CEO or leadership coaches and all of that stuff. How are you different? And what do you focus on that's different?
First of all, I look at all coaches, all executive coaches, leadership coaches, performance coaches, we're all on the exact same team. So I honor and appreciate everyone in the industry. It's co-opetition if it's anything. The industry research that we do around mental performance, I hope it gets shared by more coaches. I hope it helps them get more business because everybody needs a good coach. So let me put that on the table. And the second thing to say is I looked at athletics, and my co-founder Anna is a great athlete. And I was like, man, your athletes have a coach. Think of it like their executive coach. And they also have a performance coach, like every one of them. They also have mental performance coaches, trained psychologists in performance psychology or neuroscience that are working on their mindsets as they're getting better at the skills. And I was like, why is that? And why is it not happening so much over in business? And the way I kind of brought it down to, and this is just what I surmise, is when the professional athletes choke on the field, get the yips, you know, choke at the last minute on the touchdown, all the media
Chuck
talks,
Knobloch.
yeah, all the media talks about it, and they get drilled for it. When we fail due to mindset issues, psychology issues in the boardroom, nobody talks about it. Those people just get looked down on and fired. And I think they call it the mental health stigma, but there's a stigma around it in tech. That's not in professional sports. They look at it as a necessity in sports. They understand that it's the X factor for most athletes. Tom Brady readily admits it. He wrote a book called the TB12 method on it, but it's just so hidden in tech. It's so hidden with leaders. I know that CB Insights did a study that, about 40% of failed tech startups is largely related to mental performance challenges and issues. And they cite them and they get some great quotes of people who are honest enough to talk about it. What we do, there's no off season being a founder. And like you said, it's 24/7. These athletes, yes, they're under a lot of pressure. We are also under a ton of pressure. It's all relative. Everything we have is on the line when we found these companies. And the psychological challenges we face, to be able to deal with them adequately, I believe needs some expertise. So sure, we coach a lot of executives, we coach a lot of leaders, coach a lot of founders, but we have a concentration and discipline in mental performance. And yeah, people like Nick Smorelli and John Spear, I mean, they've had exits and they're great executive coaches, but they understand the true value of having a genuine and deep understanding of performance and performance psychology and neuroscience, and gives an edge to allow us to help people get through the incredible psychological hurdles that you face on these journeys.
I mean, running companies, running fast growing venture backed tech companies, hard. But running a 10-person construction company, also very hard. And one of the things I get from your story is when we don't have somebody trusted, mentor, coach, both hopefully, to talk to is when our brain becomes our enemy. And you make decisions that harm you, harm your company, and because it's so tied together, can harm your
Yeah,
family.
self-sabotage.
Yeah, self sabotage. So if you have a coach, if you're willing to have those conversations, to be honest, you have the ability to slow that failure rate of U.S. small businesses down by not sabotaging it yourself. Somebody that's just starting and they say, I know I need help, and there's a lot of nuance behind it. How do you tell them to start? What's step one and two?
I think it's more common in a paid coach, less common in a mentor. You need somebody who's willing to, and it's actually, unfortunately, it's less common in friendships. I think that's the unique thing about an actual paid engagement with a coach. Their job is to tell you often what you don't want to hear and stand on it and put the mirror in your face until you finally like listen in a lot of cases. And it's super uncomfortable for a friend to do. Very uncomfortable for a mentor. Sometimes, like I said, I had mentors at Slingshot who kind of hinted at maybe you're not doing something the way you should. But a paid coach would have been like, Kevin, this is my fucking job. Like, listen up. We need to talk about this a little bit more. And my mentors just wouldn't go that far with me. And I'm not saying maybe I had the wrong mentors. I think they were solid, but like, I think whoever it's going to be, mentor, coach, whatever, executive performance, somebody who's humble enough and doesn't need your approval enough to be able to speak truth to you.
Would you also say it's somebody that's willing to speak both sides of the truth? Here's where you're screwing up. See that. But also, here's where you're good. Here's
Oh
where you're
yeah, for
worthy.
sure. I mean, like I was thinking sometimes, like half the job of a good coach is just keeping the person from quitting. And maybe not externally quitting, but quitting internally, like their heart.
No, I know what you're saying.
It's like keep that, put them on life support, keep it going. Like you can get through this because these heroes' journeys are scary. We got dragons trying to burn us alive. It feels like at least that's the way our subconscious thinks.
Oh, 100%. Well, and I don't know about you, but I was on a call earlier this week, and somebody was talking about a success that we had had as a company recently, and he stopped and he goes, "You look very uncomfortable right now." And I'm like, "I am horrible at taking praise." And I don't feel like that's an uncommon trait among CEOs.
Well, yeah, because we always think we're failing.
100%.
It was like, how would I accept praise? I'm not doing well.
Second company, big company. The high school one was super cool and way cooler than what I was doing in high school. But this is your second kind of real company. As you look at it from building a company perspective, how are you personally different? And what are you doing differently to build it?
Dreamfuel versus first company?
Dreamfuel versus Slingshot.
Well, second company, okay. Dreamfuel versus Slingshot. Well, what I got caught up in the second company is there's a great phrase for it, which is like ego flu, which is just like once you start to experience success, we were getting written up in the papers all the time, and people were treating me differently. Felt like I was a dork in elementary school, middle school, and I was like, I'm finally cool, part of this in crowd kind of thing, and definitely it's impossible for it not to go to your head. And so when we started to have the hard times, it was like, see how high you've come? Now look how now look how far you can fall. And I think that's true for everybody. And the more you attach to it, and you're the CEO, you know, like you feel like you're untouchable. Like I thought I was so damn smart. I thought I had everything figured out in my 20s. It's classic cliche. Yeah, it hurt real bad when people started pulling those Jengas out, so to speak, and my ego started to collapse. Ultimately, very good for me. It was the dark night of the soul that created this. But yeah, I mean, I have a mission now. I care about my mission a lot. I care a lot about founders and executives that are going through something that, even though it might not externally be war, it can feel like that internally. You're taking psychological bullets like every day. And I just have a ton of empathy for them. So I'm willing to put myself out there to the extent that it's requested and required of me to put my ego out there. But I also understand that it's not good for me. So as I launch a podcast and do various promotional efforts for the business, I try and keep that in mind that this isn't about me. We got a mission. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I'll do the best work I can. We'll help some people along the way, but this is sure as shit isn't about me. I'm just trying to keep that in mind.
That's a tough change. At least has been for me.
Yeah, it is hard. It influences your decision making, and it doesn't always seem rational to the outside.
No, but it feels good. Feels
Yeah,
better.
yeah,
Sleep better.
yeah, yeah. And it's like bringing in talented, amazing, smart people, better coaches than me, the co-founder who's got a hell of a lot better CV than me in a lot of ways. Like just what is it? Pride comes before the fall, and I think humility is the next level of growth.
When you settle into it and you realize you're directing a band that's better at playing than you are, it's pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's the dream, right?
Yeah. One of the things I hear from you, and I'd like to get this, and then I have one final question, is every business owner, every founder struggles. It's a guarantee. Very few. 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% don't. So everybody struggles. But it sounds to me like if they are humble, willing to be coached, to find a coach and listen to a coach, they have a chance at making that journey easier. Does that
Yeah,
sound right?
yeah, definitely.
So my last question, I ask this of everybody, is if you were to, and I bet you've given this more thought than probably most people I'll ever bring on this podcast. If you had a chance to go back and give yourself a piece of advice before you started Slingshot, what advice would you give yourself?
Whatever you go through, it'll be worth it.
Whatever you go through, it'll be worth it.
Mhm.
Give me the byline on that headline.
I wouldn't want to tell my former self you're going to go through a fall, but I would want him to understand, at least at some level, that whatever hardships he goes through will be worth it in the end. And you're going to do amazing things. It just may not come the way you think it's going to happen.
I talk a lot about one of the key characteristics of happy and successful people is resilience.
Mhm.
That sounds like a part of what you're telling yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think
Awesome.
when you go through those falls, you think, it's just like it wasn't worth it and everything's a mess and whatever. Obviously, I coach on this and I know this at this point, but some way to tell my former self that kind of stuff without giving him some prelude of what he was going to go through.
I love it.
Great talking to you,
Well,
brother.
thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks so much for listening. After the First Million is presented by Decimal. To listen to more episodes and find tips to help make running a business easier, visit decimal.com/AFM. Want to join the conversation? Reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's explore the messy middle.